What's our drink called?
A lesson in virgins. I'm just kidding.
If our mouths are black by the end of this, mind your business.
Nobody say nothing and just comment a smiley face down below.
LOL. Okay, ready?
Yes.
Hello, cheers, and welcome to Tipsy Book Talks. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Rayanne.
And today we are going to be talking about our new favorite book, which is A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee.
This is our A Lesson in Vodka because we will be drinking we tried on the black vodka again and now it's just gray, but
we tried to make this last year for the Year of the Witching.
yes.
And we could not find black vodka, so we tried to dye it, and this time we tried to dye it again because we were late. So procrastinating does not get you far.
No.
But we are calling it A Lesson in Vodka because I am sure that we are going to be regretting this tomorrow.
In an hour.
In an hour when we're eating sushi and I want to die.
Yep.
Cheers!
Eek. Taylor, what would you rate it?
Okay, so first we are going to do a non-spoiler section and then a spoiler section. It's okay, I have the outline in front of me and Rayanne does not. But we are going to do a non-spoiler section. So basically what this book out. It is, again, A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. And this book is about a girl named Felicity who basically is going to a prestigious boarding school called Dalloway. And she is trying to move on with her life, move forward, even though she is suffering from a very serious trauma that happened last year. So I went into this thinking that it was all about witches. This is definitely more dark academia than it is fantasy. But we will do a rating before we get into all the spoiler sections. So Rayanne, what would you rate it?
Well, Taylor, actually, I'm going to go ahead and add on to what you had to say.
Oh.
I do want to foretell that this has a trigger warning of, like, gore, because this is like a very gory book, which I never thought it was going to be, seeing as how it was advertised as a witchy book, and I was not expecting what came. But yeah, so just a trigger warning that there's a little bit of gore in there. It's very detailed. As well, we do get an intel to a newcomer that comes on, and Felicity kind of tries to figure out what's going on with this new person that sets the scene. Because it is also based in high school. For some reason, I thought that this was in college by how they were talking about things. So it's Felicity's senior year. She sees the new person come in, and they're like the intriguing, dark personality. So
And it's almost like a murder mystery, but with three different times.
It kind of is. It really is.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
So I loved it. I rated it 5 stars. It is definitely more YA than I thought it was going to be. Again, both of us went in thinking it was going to be college.
Yeah.
And that it was going to be like a witchy fantasy book, and it turned out to be like a YA thriller. But the reason I rated it so high, first of all, was because it really incorporated all of the genres that I really love. It would switch between romance, in between thrillers, in between horror, and it had a very like magical realism also background to where like I genuinely did not know whether or not it was rooted in magic or whether or not it was rooted in just like heinous crimes, pretty much.
Yeah.
So I actually really loved it.
I rated it a 7, which on my Goodreads I also rated it a 7.
How did you rate it a 7?
I rated it a 7 out of 5. I loved this book. I did not think I was gonna like it as much, and this really sucked me in very quickly. I kind of briefly said something about it on our like intro spooky video that released earlier this month, because I was like, it's a book that I genuinely did not think I was gonna like as much, and I was like, oh, it's gonna have spooky elements, but no, it was fantastic. The just amount of things that happened that I did not expect, and I love mysteries, and this had a very mysterious aspect that I was like, wait, there's so much happening that you wouldn't have thought.
And seriously, to give you some type of background, like me and Rayanne have been in reading slumps, like hardcore have not wanted to read anything. And like both of us read this book within the span of a few days and we're texting each other constantly. And it's been a while since we've had a book that kind of made us feel like that, to the point where we had to talk about it.
Evelyn Hugo.
Yeah, it's literally been since Evelyn Hugo that we were like texting each other constantly.
Yeah. But I want to jump into the spoiler section. So if you have not read it, go ahead and stop here. Go read it. Go listen to it. Whatever you want to do. But if you have, then let's keep going and we'll cheers into it.
And if you haven't, go read it.
Literally go read it. It is an amazing novel.
Trust our ratings.
Cheers.
Spoiler section!
Who are your favorites?
Okay, I did not want to pick like main characters because both of them...
Oh, that's nice. I didn't pick a main character for my favorite either.
Both of them I was scared by like the whole time. I was like, you guys are f***ing murderers.
Yeah.
And I knew from the very beginning, I was like, Ellis, something's off with you.
She did.
Felicity, I like you. I have your point of view, but something's off with you.
Yep.
So I put Leonie and Kajal.
I put Kajal too. I thought she was so rad.
Okay, the thing with Kajal is, so I really liked how they kind of were opposites, because Kajal started off as the nice one. She was the first one to be nice to Felicity, and she had like, you know, that moment with her in the very beginning where she was the first one to reach out, and she was the first one to kind of be her friend outside of like the group. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
She was the first one to kind of actually build a relationship with her, but she did kind of pull back when Felicity said something about her her eating disorder.
About Kajal's?
Yeah, so Kajal had an eating disorder, but that is the one thing I also really did love about her character, is the fact that she had her own story going on in the background, and you can kind of watch it progressively in the way that Felicity talked about her. And same thing with Leonie. Like, Leonie started off as a character who came off as mean.
So cute.
But then she turned into like such a sweetheart.
Was Leonie the one whose grandmother was there?
Yeah.
And she was like the 5th black woman or something.
Exactly. So she like,
good for her.
She's portrayed in the beginning as like not mean, but more standoffish and a little bit harder to win over. But once you do, like, you really get to see her background, and, like, she references Zora Neale Hurston, which, like, that already puts her very high in my mind.
I had a feeling about that when she mentioned it. I was like, oh, Taylor's gonna love this.
Oh, I am. That's the exact reason why she's, like, one of my favorite characters. But overall, I just thought they were very well-written side characters.
They were. Okay, so Kajal was one of my characters because towards the end, like, when Felicity was kind of going AWOL about things, like, Kajal was like, look, dude, like, none of my business, but, like, let me help you. And she was, like, really just a sound character.
Mm-hmm.
I problematically had Ellis as one of my favorite characters.
I know you did.
Because,
oh my God, me, like, nonstop, like, I love her.
I love Ellis. I love her. I am so here for it.
You know, I do too.
And then she went crazy, and I was like,
even when she went crazy, I still was here for it. Is that bad?
She, like, openly admitted to murder, and we're just like, totally understandable, dude.
That was really smart. That was really smart.
Your
book was really good.
Yeah, but your book was phenomenal. But yes, I problematically said Ellis, but also one of my least favorite characters is Ellis, as well as Felicity, because they are murderers.
Oh, that does remind me, though, my least favorite character was Clara. I wasn't mad when she died.
Taylor texted me and was like, Clara's actually,
I had a whole theory that Carla. I had a whole theory that Clara. I'm gonna keep saying Carla now. It got in my head. Anyways, I had a whole theory that she was evil and she was somehow actually related to Alex because they made nonstop theories. Or she made nonstop references to how much they resembled each other, and that was the only thing that was similar about them. I just had this theory that, like, she was actually, like, a relative of Alex and was here for revenge.
Which would make sense with, like, how Ellis's brain worked to, like, oh, well, actually, I can blame you, Felicity, because she looks like Alex already. And I was like,
it really was wild.
The amount of times, though, I'm just going to jump into, like, my notes that I had taken about this book because, like, I thoroughly, there goes my bookmark.
Ooh, that was really close.
So I thoroughly went through and, like, it might not even register on camera, but I went through and I took massive amounts of notes. Where, like, in the beginning, I highlighted, I wrote in the margins, I commented things, like, I, like, went into it, but when it came to, like, the amount of times that Ellis struck me as, like, hey, something's not right, and I really, really wanted to believe that Ellis was fine.
I did not do that. I highlighted everything where I was like, Ellis is sketchy as
But it was like, Ellis was grooming Felicity to, like, trust her and just abide by her and want to feel close to her so that Felicity can get inside Ellis's mind, or sorry, I mixed up.
Ellis could get inside.
So Ellis could get inside Felicity's mind to know what was going on when somebody murdered, and when Felicity was like, I don't have the intention to murder, Ellis is like, well, I gotta take that next step. I gotta be the murderer and know, like, how the process went.
Well, I thought it was so weird too, because, like, even when Felicity had created that whole entire alternate story of how Alex died,
crazy,
and Ellis brings it out of her, like, the way that Ellis approached it was not to be like, oh, that's what you think happened. She was telling her the right story, but it seemed like she was recording both stories. Does that make sense? Where she was like, I'm trying to get inside of her mind. So she was very interested in hearing this other side of Felicity's story and did not correct her until the end.
Yeah.
Because she wanted to know what it was like. And I think that's how Ellis was able to conclude that Felicity killed Alex in the first place.
Yeah.
Was because if there was no guilt, she would not have created that story. The reason that she was guilty was because she did push Alex, and Alex did fall.
Okay, so I went ahead and actually highlighted something that I thought was really interesting, because the entire time Felicity and Ellis were supposed to be writing this paper, right? And so Felicity talks about her thesis, and she said, mostly how depiction of mental illness are used to build suspense by introducing uncertainty and a sense of mistrust, especially with regard to the narrator's perception of events and the confliction of magic and madness in female characters, that I literally wrote on the side, Miss Lee, is this your thesis? What did you say? Literally
applied this in the book.
I was like, ma'am, are you writing out your entire thesis to this book right here?
Literally,
as
we both highlighted the same exact thing. The same exact thing, because I had a running theory that, like, mental health would be the biggest part of it, but the way that mental health acts in women and the way that it is portrayed through women. So it made me also, too, like, it wasn't that far towards the end, where when it got to it, I was like, okay, well, maybe I should start reading this more like it is a horror book.
Yeah, but I was like, okay, even with specifically how Felicity talks about Ellis, is she's like so infatuated with who Ellis is as a person. Felicity was always talking about how she's like, I want to unravel her.
Yeah.
I want to dig deep and find out what's at the bone or something, like,
and that's
weird
how you could
descriptions
tell
of
it was
that.
toxic from the beginning.
Yes.
Because the way that they were, like, talked about and the way that she described Ellis was all very toxic. It's not a way that you want to, like, talk about somebody that you love.
No. Oh my gosh, it was so funny though, because I was looking through my notes right now and how you were like, I always felt like Hannah was not good. I literally, in part of when Felicity was going crazy and she was like, the book is gone again, I was like, it's Hannah. It has
That's
to be
the
Hannah.
thing too. I thought that Clara and Hannah were always there at
They were
very
in
very inconvenient times, where, like, they would show up at very random times and they were always there too easily. But what I will say that I love about Victoria Lee is she did set it up to the point where, like, everything was so simple. Like, you did not want to believe that Ellis was the bad character because it was too easy. So I went the whole entire book coming up with these elaborate theories and these crazy ideas and, like, did not even touch that because I thought it was too easy. And she set up so many other intricate stories.
Yes.
Such as, like, Hannah always being there coincidentally and Clara looking just like Alex.
Yes.
That, like, you would want to chase, but then it was the, story in front of you the whole entire time.
But with that specifically, Felicity literally even said that she always was seeing what was right in front of her. So I thought that was super interesting that you said that.
That is super interesting. You know what else is super interesting?
What?
Booze!
I'm gonna throw up.
This is my video. If you did not watch our, Halloween intro video where we kind of got back to posting again, I have a booze card for this video, which means at any point in the video I was able to booze Rayanne, and she has to drink this beautiful drink.
It's really pretty, but it tastes
It's very pretty, but it tastes gross. So I had to do that in the first video, so I'm very happy for payback. Because she will be doing that, which I would like to get more into something while she is doing that. And that is the whole play of, like, first of all, they're talking about mental health a lot and talking about the portrayal of women in this book, specifically in horror. And there were so many references to Persephone in this book. And I don't know if it's also because we are reading the A Touch of Darkness series by Scarlett Sinclair.
Yes.
But I just feel like Persephone is so fresh in my brain that every time it got brought up, I thought it was very, very interesting. I highlighted it every time, and it started from the very first few pages. Like, it was really interesting. The page 119, it calls it Persephone's Underworld.
Oh yeah, I forgot that the amount of times that they said Persephone and Hades.
She says, Ellis could be bringing me to Persephone's underworld, and I'd be glad for a change of scenery. And then later on, she says, she references the yellow wallpaper, which
I didn't catch that.
Different, but she does reference the yellow wallpaper, which is another story that talks about women's mental health and how it's portrayed through horror.
That's true.
And then it says,
but they also talked about, like, Shirley Jackson, and I love her writing about, what is it? We Lived in the Castle or something? Like that book? Oh. Phenomenal. They did a movie on it recently, and it was very good.
Well, then on page 152, she says, from Averno, Ellis says after a moment, and when I turn to her, she's smiling, in which a poet writes of Persephone and her marriage to the underworld, which I came up with this whole ass theory, and I don't know if it's just, like, crazy, but it's in my head, and I was thinking about it, but there are 5 Dalloway girls, correct? Like 5 Dalloway witches. Girls. And then in all of the pictures of them, the portrayal of them, it is them worshiping the devil. So it's the 5 of them and then the devil. And then I was thinking that Ellis represents the devil because in every reference to Persephone, it's referencing, like, Persephone and Hades, where Felicity is in the, like, mindset of Persephone and Ellis is in the mindset of Hades. And then when they go to do their first, like, night migration, Ellis is wearing the goat's head, which is, like, similar to how the devil is portrayed.
And even Felicity herself was saying that it resembled.
So I was following that very closely. Like, anytime the number 3 was mentioned or anytime the number 5 was mentioned, like, I was honed into paying attention to this because it was very set up like Ellis was supposed to be the devil or Hades. Felicity was Persephone, or she was one of the Dalloway 5, and I thought all of them were going to get murdered but Ellis, if I was being completely honest. Because I thought it started with Alex. Alex was the first one, and then it was supposed to be 3 years to the day that everyone else was dead. But it had been 1 year later, and, like, Clara popped up dead. Yeah. So I was, like, really honing in on, like, is this actually what's going to happen? But then they turned Clara kind of into all of the deaths.
Yeah. I'm curious if Victoria Lee actually had that in mind, because when they all started becoming really close, even Felicity herself was like, you know, we're kind of all really becoming the new Dalloway 5.
Yeah.
And so I feel like Victoria Lee had a route where she was like, I can turn them into all of this story, and obviously Ellis is the one that kills them all, and Felicity would probably be the last one to die, because this would be her telling of the story, and, like, the epilogue would have been in Ellis's view.
That's what I thought. Or just the book.
Yeah, exactly, like the entire book.
The press release of the book.
Yeah, exactly, but, like, I think she was, like, going this way, and then she's like, never mind, and, like, veered off. But, yeah, no, I could see that.
Yeah, so I came up with this whole entire theory, and I swear, like, every 5 minutes, I was, like, underlining, trying to, like, get behind what was in this character's mind.
Yeah, but Okay, the amount of times that, like, supernatural depictions are talked about in this book. Okay, so I was telling Taylor that I was like, of course, foreshadowing that is foretold for each of the characters is told through tarot cards, which I thought was very interesting, that Felicity stops and stares at the clock at the exact same minute that Ellis shows up at 3:03, which is in literally prime time witching hour, that she does all of these different sacrificial elements, like cutting her hand on Margot Robbie or whatever it was, the skeleton head, like whatever her name is. Like she does all of these things, and like the whole, which I'm very curious, that whole thing of making snow fall and the magic there, I wholly want to believe that it was actually magic. But I'm like, God damn it.
It gave the very magical realism sense, which in horror you rarely see, which I thought was very interesting. It's like, you think that it's magical and you think that it's a demon, but in reality, like, it isn't. It is a serial killer and it's your mind playing tricks on you.
Yeah.
Whereas this kind of held the sense of a magical realism book.
But I feel like it also plays in tune to a lot of people who, like, practice, like, occult Wiccan style things. Is like, a lot of the times is like, in order to have a, like, magical sense of self, you have to believe in it. Like, you have to put your whole mind into it, and that allows for your brain to kind of come up with explanations to things that happen. And that's where Felicity's character is so interesting, because she believes so wholeheartedly in it that anything she sees, which she made a whole scenario up and believed so wholeheartedly, and we were all under the assumption that it actually happened. It made for her being such a great narrator, but also it made the magical, like, element and magical realism of the story feel so legit. Like, it felt so in tune with what was happening here. And, like, us as readers, obviously anybody who reads fantasy is like, oh, okay, it's going down this route. And then we're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not, because it's not set up like a fantasy book.
It's not.
And that's the beautiful thing about it. In a way, it always switches between, you know, horror and romance and thriller. Like, it has all aspects of those that just, like, tie together so seamlessly. You good? But I didn't want to
bring... far from good.
But when you were saying that, too, like, I passed another part where it says Persephone's costume. My Persephone costume seemed absurd in juxtaposition, where she dressed up as Persephone on Halloween, too. And I tied together, like, it has... Persephone has always had a dark side as well. If you look into, like, actual Greek mythology, she is drawn to darkness, even though she is the goddess of spring and has this other kind of, like, light side to her. She's drawn to darkness, whereas freaking Felicity is drawn to Ellis, and she's drawn to the darkness in Ellis, even though she hates to admit it.
Yes. I cannot get over how much I love this book, how much I want to reread it, because even the ending itself was intense. I texted Taylor. We were coming up with so many things that were like, okay, but like...
And then when I got to the end, I couldn't text Ryan because I got to it before her, and I was like, God damn it, I'm just going to be sitting on this. So, like, literally, I have just, like, the most random little annotations where when it got to the part where Ellis, like, choked her and was, like, showing her how she would be choked, and she didn't let go.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, Ellis looking real sus right now.
Oh, I went into it on that, because she was like, have you gotten to 216? And I was like, no, I don't even know what's going on there. And then I look at it, and I was like, 216, man, is intense.
And then there's a reference to Mont Blanc, which, if you are familiar with any type of romantics period stuff, you didn't take romantics?
No.
Oh my god, well, we had to take romantics, and Mont Blanc is a very big thing between, like, Mary Shelley, Percy Shelley, Lord Byron, like, all of those authors, but all of them, for the most part, at least Percy Shelley, or not Percy Shelley, at least Mary Shelley and Lord Byron wrote kind of horrific stories, so I thought that that was very interesting that she incorporated this in, and I also did want to talk about, so, like, obviously there is a mental health thing happening with Felicity, and that is a big part of, like, the unreliable narration. Okay. But
really quick,
Yes.
I'm just looking at, like, when Ellis goes crazy, and literally I underlined something that Ellis was like, I would never, in italicized, kill you. She vows, her eyes gone wide. Felicity, I swear to you, I'll never let anything happen to you. I'd rather die.
That's a lie.
No, but that actually makes sense because she literally died in order for Felicity to not have died, because Ellis was like, well, you're going to tell on me. And Ellis started going down this crazy route of her being like, it's either you or me, babe. Who's it going to be? What's going to happen? And she literally was like, I would rather die than let anything happen to you. And so Felicity was like, all right, it's gonna happen. You are dying tonight, not me.
Well, when I was texting Rayanne, I had this idea of, like, I was trying to basically make ties between all the literature I've read before, because Victoria Lee did this very academically. Like, the way that she set it up was so smart, to the point where, like, I could make ties between so many books that we had read in our undergrad.
Yeah, exactly.
But I thought what was really interesting was the fact that it was called Dalloway. I couldn't stop thinking about Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. Mm-hmm. And I have never read Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, but I did read a book called The Hours by Michael Cunningham, where it, like, basically he draws out these two stories where he draws parallels between Mrs. Dalloway and Virginia Woolf, who committed suicide. So he was, like, going through all of that, and it was, like, drowning, and, like, he... Like, you would have to read the book because it's been so long since I've read it. And it's just like...
thinking, I was like, I might have it here, but I'm like, I don't think so. But I have some Virginia Woolf because I love her. So.
It is fuzz in my brain, so I do not quite remember it. But it's The Hours by Michael Cunningham, where he draws those parallels. So when she was making that reference, like, she made one comment where she's like, I love Virginia Woolf, but to be completely frank... Mrs. Dalloway always puts me right to sleep, which I thought was very interesting that the school is called Dalloway.
Yeah.
But, and then, like, the fact that, like, Alex died of drowning while Virginia Woolf died of drowning.
Yep.
I think she died of drowning, right?
That
like, she put rocks in her, like, she committed suicide. She put rocks. We're going to have to look this up. I'm hoping I'm not getting authors mixed up. But I was
like,
so...
That sounds really intense, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I was so focused on that while reading that, where I was like, is that actually what she's referencing, or was she referencing something else? But then, to top it all off, in the very end, I also found it super, super interesting.
She was the one that filled her pockets with rocks.
Read
and
The Hours.
Into the river, whatever, house.
Read The Hours by Michael Cunningham. It was actually a really great book. I've never read Mrs. Dalloway, but I still got a lot out of it. But I found that super interesting that, like, she had this comment where she did not like Virginia Woolf, but, like, there seems to be a lot of...
Virginia Woolf.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of ties between that. And then she ended it also, like, making a comment about, like, racial theory, if that makes sense. Where she says, 3 days I wait for the blade to fall. It never does. The police sweep in and out of the house, and I lurk around corners, waiting for someone's gaze to cut past the shell of Felicity Morrow to see what I really am. But they can't. No one sees past skin. No one senses the bones under this house like I do. So I feel like she has that moment where she is talking about, like, no one sees past, like, her outer layer into, like, what she is on the inside, which obviously is not very good, considering at this point she has killed 2 people.
Yep.
But there also were comments that she had with my favorite character, Leonie, where she, as a character, starts to learn kind of about, like, the racial injustices happening in Dalloway as well, such as the fact that, like, Leonie is, like, there's only 1 or only 5 black people in the whole entire school of Dalloway. And when she hears that, she genuinely is so surprised and kind of angered by that.
Yep.
And she starts to, like, actually do some research and start looking into that. So I found that really interesting. And just that comment of, like, no one ever sees past skin.
Yep.
I just, like, I don't know. It just made me take a step back and think about, like, not only the like comments about mental health that there are in this book, but also the comments about racial injustices.
But what I'm so struck by is her last statement where she literally says, "And hear my heart beating fast and the taste of ink on my tongue, the city opening wide below us like a waiting mouth, dash, it begins to snow." That I'm Jenny, and it is a section where it's like,
Does that mean she becomes a writer? Like, she starts writing down...
But that's why I'm like, is she kind of going into the mindset of Ellis, like how she built this whole reality around Alex, that she's like, I now understand Ellis's mindset, and like, does it actually begin to snow? Is it something that she's like is she so in her own mind that she's like, and I was like thinking the entire time that she actually was like falling, like because you see it at the time she's on the roof with her girlfriend. 3 years later,
3 years.
3 years later.
3 years. What a coinkydink.
She's with her girlfriend. She's talking about falling from the same height, the same way that Ellis would have died. That I'm like, is she kind of going into this multiple personalities type thing? That she's going into the mind of Ellis? Like, not actually, obviously, but like she's kind of creating this whole personality Ellis-wise, because she's like, with ink on my tongue, that I'm like, the only person who was writing consistently with ink on a key, like on a typewriter, was Ellis, sans Felicity, who decided to do that because she was like, I don't have technology either, for like a phase, but whatever. But like, yeah, I was like, was she trying to step into the mind of Ellis? But I was like, but it also, is she just in her mind the entire time and then she notices that it begins to snow? Or, because that's the last thing it says, is it begins to snow.
But I found that very interesting because snow was such a big part of like the alternate story that she had created with Alex in her mind.
Yes, but also
and
it was like
3 years to the day is when all of the Dalloway sisters died from the original girl.
Oh my gosh, is the whole it begins to snow?
3 years to the day, so Ellis is actually the first death in her mind, and then 3 years to the day, like, she could go on to kill, 4 more people.
But that, okay.
Either way, it's all just theories.
I love this story because that really does open it up for a sequel. Like, holy...
We could go on about this book for so long. Again, it is probably like the favorite book that we have read since The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, to where we are just creating like nonstop ideas of what could possibly happen, or alternate ideas. But
I'm dying because normally when we drink and we talk about books, we're like at the end, and we're like, no, but you don't understand. This theory could actually play out very well.
And I want to tell you right now that, like, both me and Rayanne were significantly tipsy before starting filming this. And I feel like I have actually sobered up because I'm just like, theories. If you guys still would like to talk about this, you can message us, DM us at tipsy_book_TALKS on Instagram. Yeah. We would love to chat about theories. Both of us have constantly been thinking about it. So if you have any other ideas, we would love to know, or you can comment them down below. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to follow us on Instagram, as we mentioned before, and TikTok at tipsy_book_TOKS.
Yep.
Anything else?
No, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We love this book so much, and we hope that you guys love it just as much.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're going to cheers out. Ooh.
Cheers.
Cheers.
We love you, Victoria.
We love you, Victoria Lee. Thank you so much.